Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Happy Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. So excited. It's time for another day of Women with Grit. So excited to have on the stage with us tonight. We have Terre Holmes, of who I will bring up in just a moment. And also joining my co-partner, Lee Molette, will be joining us a little bit later. But in the meantime, I'm spinning in the big chair. We'll have a good time getting us started. Before we jump in, just to remind you all, go ahead and like, share. Be sure to bring in your friends. We have a wonderful time ahead of us with Mr. Ray Holmes, of who I will bring up in just a moment. But Women with Grit, again, we just believe in sharing the stories about phenomenal women who are doing amazing things in the community as well as in their lives and beyond. So without further ado, I want to make sure that we say a special thank you to all of our sponsors. We have Lisa at MJC Insurance, and she can be reached at 615-873-1988 or Lisa at mjcins.com, where they will shop over 30 companies to get you the right homeowners, auto, as well as workers' comp. We have Lauren at Molette Investment Services for all of your benefit planning needs, 401k, disability, medical, as well as dental. And she can be reached at 615-627-0968 or Lauren at Molette Investment Services.com. And of course, we have Mr. Terrell Perry, and he can be reached at Terrell at Molette Investment Services.com for all of your wealth planning needs, your life insurance needs, your long-term care at 615-627-0968. And of course, you can reach me at Vision Strategy Management, where we truly believe in making execution easy for you as well as your organization. And we do that on two sides of the business, both focusing on personal, your people performance, as well as process performance. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest, Miss Terre Holmes, who is the CEO and founder of Lily and Eve, as well as, hey, Terre, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you, Charelle?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. We're so excited to have you and talk to you about your amazing story, of which I've had just an opportunity to learn just the tip of the iceberg of it. So our viewers are in store for just a dynamic time.
Can't wait. Can't
So
wait.
thank you so much. Really, and I met Teray just through a mutual friend of ours as well. And so I'm looking forward to actually sharing the stage. So I'm going to get out of the way, but if you could give us just the opportunity of learning a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your story of grit.
Oh, wow. So, first, I want to thank you for having me on as a guest. It's an honor to be here and to talk about, what that word means to me and how I have had to persevere, as many people have, especially during these current times that we're in, and have a lot of grit in order to get through. So, I
Mhm.
am Terre Holmes. I am what I call a lifestyle enthusiast. I own a few businesses, and the brand is really about lifestyle and really helping women to create lives and businesses that they love that leave legacies. And so, my story is probably like a lot of people. I had a pretty challenging childhood. I would say that grit really starts to, we're defined pretty much by the things that happen as we're growing up, and it starts to determine how much grit we have in life to get through life. And so, growing up, it was a really challenging time. I was the oldest of six siblings, and my mom and my dad developed drug addictions when I was just a little girl. And being the oldest child, that really shaped how I responded to life, but it also shaped how I would respond to life, much later in life. And so, I used what I learned and the things that I had to endure to really start to help other people overcome similar obstacles, or perhaps maybe very different obstacles, but to use those same tools and resources in order to help people sort of come out of their own traumas. And so I know that word trauma is a big word that we've been using pretty much for the past year, because trauma is something that so many people endure, but they really don't realize that they are going through that, going through trauma. And I remember listening to a woman who was a therapist, and this was about 3 years ago in 2017. And this was right after I had come out of the hospital, um, after being diagnosed with multiple blood clots on my lungs. I had a pulmonary embolism. And I remember sitting in the car and listening to this woman on NPR, and she was talking about trauma. And she was defining all of the what what trauma looks like in our lives. And she talked about trauma being a move, trauma being
Mm-hmm.
a new job, trauma being a divorce, trauma being an illness. And it was just so crazy to me because all of those boxes at that time in my life I could check off. I
Right.
had just gotten a divorce in early 2017. I was basically homeless because I
Mm.
lost everything during the divorce. And I had just come out of the hospital with a massive, pulmonary embolism. And I wasn't,
Wow.
yeah. And all of those things were happening. And so I started to realize that I had endured a lot of trauma. And, so many people don't make it out of situations like that. Many
Mm.
people never recover, but I realized that if you have certain tools in your toolbox that I call your toolbox of life, that you really can overcome almost anything. And so
Mm.
that's, so I realized that the trauma that I experienced or the early years of my life really defined how I dealt with life later on and how I dealt with those traumas as they showed up in my life.
Wow. And that is quite a bit, even all at once, to your point, a divorce being, like you said, pulmonary embolism. And then what was the third one that you were
And
dealing
I mean, pretty
with?
much being
Homelessness.
homeless and not having a job, just all these
Yeah,
things happening at once. And, moving to a new city. So a move can be traumatic. And
that's right.
so all of those things were happening all at once. And
Hmm.
I know that when I talk about the tools in your toolbox, one of those tools is prayer,
Yeah.
prayer. And so I know that my belief in my earlier foundation in life is what led me through what I was going through, right? And so
Yeah.
I just, encourage people and I ask people all the time, like, what are the tools you have in your toolbox? Because we
Hmm.
all have tools, but we
Hmm.
don't all tap into them.
That's right. And you're speaking, I think, on a very relevant topic, especially, coming through the cusp of COVID and things of that nature. A lot of people have experienced loss on many aspects and sides. And so, one of the questions that I was going to ask you is how did you maintain your sanity and what were some of the tools that you have in your toolkit? Prayer being, I think, for me, exceptionally, also a woman of faith, is one that definitely carries me through. What are some of the other tools that you could leave or some of the other tools that help to carry you through that season?
Um, I always say that having friends who help you to remember who you are,
Mm-hmm.
help you to remember what you have come through.
Mm.
Sometimes we have people around us who help us remember the past, but not the good parts of the past. They're
Right.
they're reminding us of our mistakes. They're reminding us of what we didn't get right, right? But
Yeah.
those friends who remember what you have endured, what you have how you've succeeded, how you've won in life, because sometimes we forget. So having people around you who help you to remember just how amazing you are, who help
Yeah.
you to remember the things that you grew through, right?
Mm.
And so that you don't forget. So I think that that was one of the most important things. One of the resources that I called on were my friends and family members who helped me to remember what I
Yeah.
had through, so I could know what I could get through. And in addition to that, I write, I journal. And so I remember when I was going through this very trying year, I used to journal. I would do two sides. One would be my meditation, and one would be my prayer. And so every
Mhm.
morning I would get up and I would I can't remember the how I would do it, but I think I would meditate first and then pray second, or
Yeah.
versa. And then I would write out questions before I started my prayer. I would
Yeah.
write out these questions in terms of what I wanted answered. And after I would finish meditating, I would start journaling and answering those
Hmm.
questions. And it was as if, God was speaking to me.
Yeah.
and helping me to really get these questions answered and to have some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I remember something else I was doing during that time, and I still try to do it now. I don't do it as much as often, but I found it to be very therapeutic. I found solace in it. And one of those things I would do is when I would go to bed at night, I would pray and I would, God, what do you want me to do tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. Because all I had was one day at a time. That was
That's
it.
right.
And so I just needed step by step. Just tell me what to do tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Because there was so much that I just I couldn't think through it. And
Yeah.
so that was one of the things that I used. And not ironically, I was going to say ironically, it wasn't irony. It was God. I would wake up the next day and the path for that day was ever so clear. It was always ever so clear. But the other thing that I learned to do, Charelle, during these times over the past 4 years, is to trust myself more, to trust that knowing, that intuition,
Yeah.
that guttural feeling that you have, because that instinct and that guttural feeling that you have really is God speaking to you. It's your higher power, whether you call it
Mm-hmm.
God or whatever it is that you call it. It's that higher power speaking to you and telling you what it is that you need to do. And I have found that every time I ignored it, it did not serve me well. Every
That's right.
single time that voice told
That
me
guiding compass.
and I ignored it, it did not serve me well. It was always not a good outcome. So
Yeah.
learning to trust your knowing, learning to listen to the voices, but you can only hear them when you create, solace, when you create that peaceful space. And I know so many
Yeah.
women probably wonder like, well, how do I create that? I have kids, I have a husband, I have a job, I have a life that is
Mm.
nonstop. How do I create that? And I say that you have to steal that time back. You have to
Right.
reclaim that time for yourself. I don't
That's
care if
right.
you do it when you're sitting on a toilet. You got to reclaim some time whenever and wherever you can get it. If the time
Mm-hmm.
means that you close the bathroom door and you stand there for an hour, you run a bubble bath and it's
Right.
just you and your candles and your oneness with God or your higher being. Reclaim your time
Mm-hmm.
and take your lunch breaks, not just to eat, but take your lunch breaks to reflect and to
That's
journal
it.
and to think. And so, those are some of the ways some of the tools that I use that have helped me to persevere through. And it hasn't always been easy, but I know that many people would not have survived some of the things that I've survived. And I won't sit here and say that it was easy because it wasn't easy. But the question is, do you want to survive or not?
That's right. Do you, I mean, and I love the fact that, I mean, you have definitely deposited a lot of gems from making sure that you find the time to, to create the space for quietness when
Yes.
things are loud and things are just vibrant in life. I mean, it helps to go within so that you gain that clarity needed so that you can be effective. So I love that you said that. And even the aspect of trusting yourself and being able to trust your own voice, because to your point, when there's so much dynamic noise coming at you, you begin to question even, yourself. And so having the space and the time to journal, you're like my soul sister. Because I do the same thing in terms of just being able to find that place of quietness and being able to journal and take the time that you need to really delve into it. Because to your point, when you are looking at trauma, of which, the last year has been traumatic. If we call a spade, if we call it for what it is, we're in a space where we have to think through, how do we reset? How do we do so? And it can feel overwhelming if you look at everything all at once. But if you piece it one thing at a time, it becomes clear in terms of what you have to do and end your way through.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that, Teray.
Yeah, and that word reset, a lot of us have been talking about that this year, over the past year. What
Yes.
does reset look like? And for so many people push reset on their lives. They moved, they changed jobs, they quit jobs, they started businesses, they ended relationships, they started new relationships. So many people push reset. And I know that may seem like, well, that's the stuff people do every day, but not really, because oftentimes we're on autopilot and we're just sort of moving through our lives on autopilot, and we're not intentionally resetting. Like life is sort of resetting for us.
Yeah.
But to intentionally reset, to intentionally say, listen, this is overwhelming right now. This is too much right now. I need to reset. I need to pull back some layers. I need to say no to some things. I need to prune the excess in my life and really look at what is most important on this tree that is blossoming, that is me. What's the most important part of it? Do I need all this other stuff? And so, so that word reset, I've been really looking at that for my own self, because 2021 is really going to be prayerfully in my plans a tremendous reset for me.
I love that you said that. And I'm going to bring up my fellow co-partner, fellow co-host, Lee Molette, and then I want to make sure that we delve into a question. So let me go ahead and introduce Lee. Hey, Lee.
Hey, Lee.
You got no audio. You're on mute.
I have a 2-year-old in the room. We're traveling. So we just got to the hotel, and I think right now he's quiet. So I'll be on it. Good to see you, Terre.
Good to see you, Lee.
So we are talking about reset, Lee. We're talking about, overcoming trauma and delving into all of the things that have transpired last year. Terre, one quick thought, and then I'm going to definitely give it to Lee here. When it comes to, because one of the things that you said was knowing when to prune and what to let go. And when it comes to being a woman of grit, it's, saying yes, okay, is important, but also as important is knowing when to say no and knowing what to say no to. So what has been your guiding compass with not getting overwhelmed with things and balancing out what to say yes to versus what to say no to?
Girl, I'm still learning. So today I had a podcast interview, because I have my podcast, the Terre Holmes show, that's coming soon. So I've been doing pre-recordings for that. And I told my colleague who I was interviewing, I said, I gotta say no. And she said, you haven't learned that yet? And although I am learning that, it is a journey, because as an entrepreneur, you want to say yes to so many things. And you think that these things really serve you when it's just not the time. And if we focus more, or if we're more intentional about where we need to place our focus, I think that we have more success. And I haven't always been intentional about where I needed to place my focus. And so really my body tells me when. Your body will tell you when. Your body will tell you when you have done too much, when you're overdoing it. And so I love what Lisa Nichols says. If you know Lisa Nichols, she says that no is a complete sentence. And she says to make your yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, make your yes count. And so I'm saying, I'm learning to say no. I'm learning to really understand. I think when you understand where you're trying to go, you understand that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I tell you, it's tricky trying to figure out when and who to say no to without offending people or making them feel like you think more of somebody else versus them because you said yes.
Yes.
And so it is tricky, and it's a journey to get to know. One of the things that I've found is that there are people that have done you favors in the past, and so they're going to call those chips in at some point, and sometimes they call them all in at one time.
Yeah. And so my brand is a lifestyle brand, as I said. And Lily and Eve, that's what it's about. And so part of that lifestyle brand is real estate. And so I'm a real estate agent. I'm a real estate investor, wholesaler. And so I help investors. I work with investors. I work with home buyers and home sellers. And that part of my business can be very overwhelming, because I am not I don't deal with the little things very well. I'm a big picture kind of person. So
Mhm.
I had to learn. I was telling my best friend this morning. I said, you know, I said, I realized I need help because I don't do the small things really well. Like, yeah, like I need the whole figuring out, oh, well, click this, you know, the details of things, because I'm like, okay, what's the big picture? What do I need to be? What do I need to do? And so realizing that I need an assistant to help me manage those things, the little pieces, so that I don't fall apart, right? And so that's one of the things that I'm learning, and saying no, but also delegating, so that I can say
Yeah.
yes to the things that I need to, and want to say yes to, and I don't feel overwhelmed. So hiring
Awesome.
an assistant. So that's what
Hiring.
Hire an assistant.
yes, I had an interview this morning talking with a new assistant, and she's going to work with me until I find a permanent assistant. She's a temporary, but you have to know yourself. You know,
Mhm.
you can't be amazing in the world. You can't go out and conquer the world if you don't have systems in place, and if you don't have people in place to help you manage those systems and processes, and help you to regain some of your time so you can do the big things in your business, while someone else focuses on the little things that also are very important.
Love that. Tell us a little bit more. So you dove into a little bit about some of the businesses that you have. If you could elaborate a little bit more about the things that you're doing, and because I know we only touch the surface of what you've done.
Yeah. So I've had several businesses in the past, but right now the focus is on two businesses that have different streams to them. But Lily and Eve is the sort of the main business, which is a lifestyle brand, as I said, and we curate gifts and experiences for women with style and grace. And so that business was
Love
found
that.
of, pure necessity. I When I got divorced, I was trying to figure out what kind of product I could create that would generate a residual income for me, that I can do it one time and it could just create, consistent income.
Mhm.
So I created something. It's a family heirloom gift called the Blessing Plate, and I created the Blessing Plate, which is a gift that can be regifted. And I wrote the words, it's original words. Now we have original art on it, and it comes in this beautiful box. It's just a beautiful gift. And that was the first gift that I created. And initially, I wasn't thinking about starting a business out of that. I just wanted to create a product. So out
Yeah.
of that, Lily and Eve was born, which is named after my grandmother, Lily, who passed away from ovarian cancer in 2016, and my
Mm.
grandmother, Evelyn, who passed away last year in 2020. Um, from old age, I guess you could say. And
Sorry
so,
for your loss.
yeah, yes, thank you for that. And so then from that, I also have Terre Holmes Property Partners. As I told you, I'm a real estate agent, real estate
Mhm.
investor, and I work mostly with investors. And so out of that brand, looking to really get more into investing myself, purchasing properties, doing short-term rentals, creating an event space. We're working on an event space in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from. Also, I live in Maryland, so eventually an event space here. And I really love real estate. I love all things home and food and culture and art. And that's what Lily and Eve as a brand is, overall. And so those are my two babies that I am nurturing. One is getting a little more love than the other, and it's jealous right now. But uh,
It's always that way.
It
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Now,
So,
how do you promote Lily and Eve? Is there a website? How can our listeners find out more about it?
so it's lilyandeve.com, Lillie, lilyandeve.com. And so they can go and they can subscribe to the newsletter. We have gifts that we'll be creating more gifts that'll come onto the website. A lot of the gifts are custom, so we don't
Mhm.
buy, in bulk from any place. We customize and manufacture gifts, and really looking to move the brand more to the wholesaling space where we wholesale to stores. So I'm looking
Mhm.
for buyers right now, particularly for the Blessing Plate, because we want to get the Blessing Plate into stores. And that's really what the focus of Lily and E for the long, down the road, that's what it's looking like.
I love that. And would love to even talk to you about how we can get some women with grit specific gifts that we can, definitely be sure to give our guests and people who we come in contact with as a part of what we do. So love to support you there too.
Thank you. Yes, that would be wonderful.
So tell us a little now, Terre, tell us a little bit about how, you talked about your family or your friends and having a tribe surrounding you. Can you elaborate on how that tribe has even helped you with your businesses or just in the things that you are doing now?
So, they say you have to inspect what you expect, right? And so I remember going back looking at some of my transactions, going back to my transactions over the past few years. And I started realizing this pattern that there were a few people in my tribe who were consistent contributors. They were constantly getting coaching from me, buying my products, buying my services. And I think that it's really important that when you notice people who are consistently supporting you, that you acknowledge them. And so so there are a few people in my tribe who, no matter what, they're supporting what I'm doing, they're sharing what I'm doing. They're just great supporters. In addition to that, I have also found that there are some people who can I tell the truth?
Yeah, please.
I'm just gonna go and tell the truth right now. That's my Cleveland girl coming out right now. I also have found.
Please do.
So I've also found that the people who you thought would support you don't, and that can be very telling at times. And I found that when I was struggling in 2017, I had the most support. And not support, not real support, but support as in people checking in to find out what's going on. But when I came out of that struggle and when I started to excel and when I started to say, hey, can you support the business? This is what we're doing now. Those same people became very quiet.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And they disappeared. And so what you have to be aware of, you have to be aware of people who are only around during your struggle and not during your stride.
That's good. Yes.
You'll find that so many people, if you're not paying attention yourself, you will find that so many people are just there for your struggle. And you will think that that is genuine support and genuine interest in how are you doing. When in fact, I realized during that time, Lee and Charelle, that I was very naive. And my naivete, I had to see people for who and what they were. And we put titles on people and we call them our sister, our friend, our cousin, our mother, our whatever. But those are just titles. People are what they do, not who they are. They are what they do. And I started to see people for what they were doing as opposed to who I thought they were.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. We talked about something similar in a past show, which is the people who you expected to show up and be there, to your point, were quiet. And why is it so much more challenging to get the support in business and when you're doing things that are progressive than not? So I think that you hit on an interesting point. We've got, of course, a couple of people who are definitely seconding what you're saying along, as well. I want to also kind of like ask a separate question, but almost along the same lines. Did you find that you had, when you were going through any of those seasons in life, any self-limiting beliefs, anything where any of the barriers where you were in your own way? If so, what did you do about it? And how did you get out of your own way? That was like, okay.
So it says if I have two, I've been in my way so often, I think I have two left feet. I'm like, Terre,
Does that mean that you're going in circles?
get out the way. No, just stumbling over myself,
Yeah.
you know? And,
Yeah.
you know, so sometimes I think that there was a period of time where I didn't realize I was in my way. I think that when you're going through so much, you're just trying to survive. And when you're just trying to survive, when you're in survival mode, you're not in thriving mode. You can't be in thriving mode and survival mode at the same time.
Right.
And until you decide that I don't want to be in survival mode anymore, that I'm really ready to thrive, you won't get out of your way. So it really starts here first, like it's that mindset. And so I've been in my way, and some of those self-limiting beliefs, you know, I know that when I was a younger woman, that there was a self-limiting belief of, am I good enough? And that self-limiting belief came from, as I told you earlier, Charelle, being the child of two drug addicted parents. That created a self-limiting belief in me, because no matter how smart I was, no matter how capable I was, no matter how articulate I was, or how successful I thought I was, I still had this stigma that I was the adult child of two drug addicted, or not the adult child, but at that time, a child of two drug addicted parents. And so my parents' mistakes, my parents' behaviors dictated how I saw myself. So I didn't fully show up in spaces when I was a younger woman. And, you know, a part of Terre showed up, and then there was a part of Terre that she left at the door because I didn't want everybody to see all of me. You know?
Terre, so would you say that it was more in your head that maybe you thought that people looked at you a certain way because of your parents versus, because a lot of people probably didn't even know your parents, I guess.
No, that was my own self-limiting belief. Nobody cared.
Right. Say that again, because a lot of people don't really understand what you just said.
Yes, and I'm glad you asked me that question. No one cared. No one knew. And it wasn't until I didn't start speaking. So you were introduced to me through Tabidi Boom. And Tabidi met at a time when I started speaking and talking about my parents' addiction. At that time, I was living in New York City in the 90s, and I wrote a play called Excerpts from a Ghetto Life. And I wrote, directed, and produced it, and was acting in it. And at that time is when I met Tabidi, and I was traveling with it. And I don't know if you guys know an actor by the name of Russell Hornsby, but Russell was the guy he was in the movie The Hate You Give. He was the father.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
So Russell and we had gone to school together. And no, I'm sorry, we didn't go to school together. I was at Brooklyn College getting my master's, working on a master's degree, and Russell had just graduated from Brown University. And so someone cast him in my plays, the director I was working with. So he and I became friends, and we would tour around during this play. And I was acting as myself, and he was acting as a character. And this play was a 2-person play, just he and I. And so that was a journey of my healing process, and me learning to let go of the pain of the past. And so recently, like, no one knew, but it was my own stuff that I had to overcome and get rid of. I had to dump my own baggage. And it took some years to dump that baggage, but I had to dump the baggage. So I went from that to something else, because another thing Lisa Nichols says is higher levels, higher devils. Right? So as I started to have more success, I started to do, overcome my past, I got in my way again because I started to experience imposter syndrome. Right? So it's like you're an imposter. You're an imposter. You're not who you say you are. So I think that as we grow, that we are constantly having to redefine who we are in new spaces. Because if you're in the same space, you're not growing. So as you start to go into new spaces and new places, you're constantly redefining who and what you are.
That's right.
So I was constantly like, okay, now that I'm over the you're not good enough, it's like, okay, now you're good enough to be in that space. And it's like, but hold on, but are you an imposter? Like, you know, and I think that women deal with that more than men deal with that.
Yes.
Women deal with that far more than men deal with that. So I say all of this to say that I don't want people to ever think that, you know, the people who are successful or people who seem successful, that we're not dealing with some of the same things that other people are struggling and dealing with, because we are.
Right.
And you have to, Les Brown says, you have to sell yourself on yourself every day. Every day.
That's right.
Because you hit, you know, and so so you have to sell. So I sell myself on Terre, like, girl, you can do this, girl, you know, you're good enough. And so I think that I don't know, maybe you guys haven't experienced that, but that has been a reoccurring thing for me to continuously sell myself on myself.
And you know something, Terre, let me tell you, it's almost, I hate to say it this way, but an entry point to becoming even a high performing achiever is that the fact that you have to constantly, like you said, sell yourself, to others, and overcome that aspect of it. And the smaller the subset of people that there are in that industry or in the space that you're working in, even, you know, the more you have to overcome that, like you said, imposter syndrome, the aspect of being enough, because there are typically very few in the room with you, or even to be able to have that specific conversation. Absolutely. So you're not alone.
And that's exactly what you said. Like, you know, some of the things that I've been able to accomplish in my life. The first time that the imposter syndrome really hit me, it was in 2014. I had just written my first book, or not my first, actually that was my third, but it was the first like real publication. And it was called, it's called Love Lessons for Single Happy Girls. And so it had just come out. I had just been published. And I had a speaking engagement at Indiana Tech University. And I had that engagement for an entire year, where I was going to be delivering the commencement speech for their graduating class of like thousands. And so it was, you know, that was the biggest audience I had ever had. First time ever doing a commencement address to a college, university. And a few days before, the president of the school had his secretary to call me and tell me that the board of trustees had decided to give me an honorary doctorate degree.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, they said they voted and they decided, because of my years of service in arts and education, my years of service as a mentor, as a coach, as a teacher, you know, 20 years of service. And oftentimes we think that what we do is thankless. You know, it's like, you know, does anybody really see what I'm trying to do? You're just doing it, and you don't do it for accolades. But some of the things we do is like, okay, I'm just doing it, you know, because this is what I want to do and this is who I am. And I remember standing on that stage delivering that commencement address at that particular time, and that was the first time that I experienced the imposter syndrome. Because I'm standing there and they're giving me an honorary doctorate degree, and only 1% of the world's population has honorary doctorate degrees. 1% of the world's population. So when you talk about, when you enter into such small circles of people, right? When you're on smaller stages, and it's like, you know, it's like, who am I competing with? Well, I'm competing with myself. But you guys, we're all in this, and why did they give it to me? Was I so deserving of that? And so, you know, it's funny. So when we talk about those friends, I remember after I got it, I started calling myself Dr. Terre. So some people refer to me as Dr. Terre now. And so I started using that because Maya Angelou, Dr. Maya Angelou, she did not have an actual doctorate degree. Dr. Maya Angelou had all honorary doctorates. We call her Dr. Maya Angelou, right? And so the late Dr. Maya Angelou. And so I started using it, and I remember people, friends, coming to me and saying, you know, you can't use that on your resume. You know, you shouldn't be using Giving me all of these do's and don'ts for my honorary.
Your honorary.
Yeah.
Not their honorary, your honorary.
Yeah.
Friends. Wow.
People who I had not even spoken to in a long time,
Mm-hmm.
they were trying to tell me how I could and couldn't use my honorary doctorate. And so that was telling. But and so I say this because so many times we allow other people to sort of shape how we even experience our own successes. Like, well, dang, like, you know, this is a big deal, but you're
Yeah.
downplaying this big deal for me. And that's when I really realized for the first time, girl, you are the bomb.
You are.
Yeah. We know women in general, even with earned degrees, doctorate degrees, people a lot of times, men and women, refuse to call them doctor. And and to me, it's, and I don't have I have an earned bachelor's. That's all I have.
Right.
But it's insulting to me, knowing whether it's honorary or it's earned regardless. Someone came up with the term earned to try to, I think in my view, to belittle the honorary doctorates. But they're not just giving those out to everyone. As you say, less than 1% of the population, and you earned it a different way.
Yes.
You earned it in a way that this university, because only universities can bestow these honorary degrees.
Yes.
You can't get it from your high school. You can't, I can't give you one. Anybody on the street can't give you one. You can only get them from the universities.
Yeah.
And to your point, they had to vote on it. They have to determine that you've earned this honorary degree, and you're going to now carry their name forward and represent that university.
Yes.
So it's, that I think that's a societal thing also, but it does also help you get a better idea of what your friends are about, or maybe they're not friends.
Yeah.
Now, Terre, you've we actually probably need to give you a quick break.
Break.
Hey, to you guys.
We've been just rolling.
Yeah, we've been rolling. We'll give you about a minute if you want to grab some water or anything, and then I'll I'll thank our sponsors.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, and hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Terre Holmes is rocking it. We forgot to give her 30-minute break earlier,
Right.
So we're giving it
it's
to
so
her
good
now.
though. It's
Really good. Feel free to ask any questions, make any comments. I've seen some from Tara and Ebony and Nina, and I know there are others because we have people are watching through YouTube and our website as well as on Facebook Live. So however you're watching, send in your information, any questions or what have you that you have. Also, go ahead and share this with your friends. If you're enjoying the conversation with Terre, share it with your friends. They can catch the last 10 to 15 minutes and be inspired as well and learn something as well. We want to thank our sponsors, MJC Insurance Group, mjcins.com, mjcins.com. Give them a shout, have them quote your boat insurance, your homeowner's insurance, auto insurance, any type of insurance you have. Give the folks at MJC Insurance a call. You can reach them via their website and get all the information that you need from them. They'll shop over 30 companies to help you find the insurance that's right for you. Also, Lauren Overton at Molette Investment Services. Lauren, Lauren at MoletteInvestmentServices.com. Lauren is there to help you get quotes for your company's health insurance plan, your company's retirement plan, any type of corporate benefits that you want to offer to your employees for small, medium, and large companies. Also, if you're a solo entrepreneur, it's just you or you and your spouse, we can set up a solo K for you, and Lauren will be happy to help you get that set up. And then Mr. Terrell Perry with Molette Investment Services. He's at Terrell, Terrell, at Molette Investment Services. Terrell is excited about helping people. We're rolling into the second quarter now, and some of y'all still haven't gotten your financial plan, your investment plan, your wealth building plan, your legacy plan, all this great stuff that you talked about at the beginning of the year. Some of you haven't taken the time to do it. What were you saying, Charelle?
No, I'm just simply saying, like you said, what's going on? I mean,
Yep,
now's the time. It's a great
now's the time.
opportunity. So if you
Right.
haven't reached out,
Yep.
be
Reach
sure
out
to
to
do so.
Terrell. If you're walking around with no life insurance, and you have kids and a family, you're out of order. So you need to give Terrell a call and or email him and have him get you a quote. He'll get you quotes from a number of different companies to help you find and select the best insurance for you. Everybody doesn't need term. Everybody doesn't need whole life. Everybody does. There's so many different types of insurance out there. You want to work with a professional whose goal is to just help you find the best type of insurance for you and your family.
Yeah.
And then also have Terrell help you work up your financial plan and get yourself on track for 2021. Don't go blow that stimulus check if you're getting one. Figure out something else to do other than the mall or Amazon, unless you're buying Amazon stock. And $1,400 will get you about a half a share. So you definitely want to make wise decisions as you move forward. And as always, vision strategy management. Ms. Charelle Lands. We want you to check out her website, CharelleLands.com. CharelleLands.com. She's just got all kind of tools to help you build your business, build your career, build yourself, strengthen your family, just all sort of tools. And you just need to go to her site, check out any classes she's got coming up. She's got a number of books for you to read, a number of books for you to pass on and buy as gifts for others. So definitely check out CharelleLands.com. Charelle.
That's right. Strategymanagement.com, where we believe in making execution easy.
Execution. I tell you, that's a big word. It's a big word. When you execute, big things happen.
That's right. The only way big things happen is by execution.
I mean, you find so many people, Charelle, plan and plan and plan, and they're planning and trying to get to perfection. And we know the perfection is the enemy of success.
That's right.
Because there is no such thing as perfection as long as humans are involved. So get that plan to a workable situation. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to refine it over time. It's a living plan. But get to executing and get your business started, get your career started, whatever it is that you need to get started, get it started.
That's right.
It's exciting. And again, any questions for Terre? Shoot them in to us. Any comments, what have you? Send them in. We're going to bring Terre back for the next 10 minutes and wrap up.
That's right.
Hey, Terre.
Hey,
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you've done a lot of things, and Charelle and I were just talking about with her company. She empowers you to execute your plan and your strategy. Mm-hmm. So you've done a lot. I mean, you've written plays, you've written books, you got companies, you're doing real estate, you're training, you're speaking.
That's why I'm so tired right now.
Well, you don't look it, so you are doing well.
Yeah. So what's driven you to do so much, but what's also freed you up to not hold yourself back from doing so many things? Everybody, all of us, including myself, have a book in our head. We just have so many different things that we feel that we can do or want to do, but something holds us back. But it doesn't seem like, and I'm not saying you're perfect, but you haven't let a whole lot hold you back. So let's talk about that, what you've done to execute on your visions.
Wow. So I owe a debt of gratitude to my late grandmother, Evelyn. She was very instrumental in helping me to overcome some things that I believed, right? She believed in me. She invested in me time and money. And when you have someone who believes in you and is willing to go the bat and invest time and money, that helps you believe more in yourself. So when you're a young person, right, and you have this vision for whatever it is you have a vision for. So I remember being a kid, grandmother put me in acting class. She put me in modeling school. I went to Barbizon when I was a young girl. I used to model with a group called J.W. Dean Productions, and I used to model with Terrence Howard.
Oh, wow.
He was old, he was much older than I, and at the
Of course, of course.
at the time I didn't know he was Terrence Howard, and it was my grandmother when he became Terrence Howard. It was my grandmother who was like, "Yeah, that's the you remember the boy you used to model with?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, what?" And so my grandmother introduced me to so much. And when I said I wanted to try something and do something, she never told me it was impossible. She never told me no. When I wanted to learn to cook as a young person, I would watch Saturday morning cooking shows, and I would write down all of the recipes and write down all of the ingredients, and then she would go and buy them for me. So when you have someone in your life as a young person who invests in you and believes in you, and that's the beginning, right, of I can do anything. I think of Barack Obama, how his mother invested in him and let him believe that you could do whatever it is you truly want to do. People tell us that, but they don't back that up. And so I had someone in my life who backed that up. But I think that it was also an insatiable desire in me to just want to do things. I have talents and skills that God has given me. And I have this quote that I often say. It's by Irma Bombeck. It says, "When I stand before God at the end of my life, I would like to say that I used everything. I would like to think that I would have no talent left, and I could say, God, I used everything you gave me." And so I try to,
Wow, powerful.
yeah, and so I keep that quote somewhere so that I remember that God gave me talents and gifts, and I do God a disservice when I don't use them. And I will tell you that there's so much more in me that I haven't produced. But I think it starts with this first having someone in your corner who believes in you. So if you're a parent or an auntie or an uncle, like, invest in the dreams and the visions of young people, because it matters when someone invests in you. And when they say, my grandmother used to always say, "Girl, you need to, I can't wait till you write that life story." And she passed away before I could get it out. But
Wow.
she came to every single thing that I did. She was my biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan, my greatest supporter. And that's really where it started. That's really where it started. Anything I said I would do, she was like, "Then go do it. Go do it."
Well, I don't think the life story that she talked about was for her to read, because she lived your life. So she knew your story.
Yeah.
But she wanted you to write it to empower and to help others, like you're doing this
That's
evening.
right.
And so that's where the power of her statement is. And because she said it, we know you'll do it.
I'm gonna do it because she said it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. There's so
Yes.
much to be said, and I always say that our stories are a gift. They're not for us. They're a gift for someone else.
Hmm.
That's
And
right.
and so yeah. So my story is coming soon
All
to
right.
to a theater near you.
Of course. Hey,
Looking forward
you're an
to it.
actress, so.
Looking forward to it. So,
Yeah.
Ray, tell us on the topic of story, excuse me, what was one of your, like, if you think about the stories that you've written for the Black enterprise, what is one that you could think of that was maybe your favorite story to write?
Oh boy. I had an interview and a story that didn't make it. Can I talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I interviewed uh, the sister from Love and Marriage Huntsville.
Uh-huh.
Do you know the show?
I don't know the show. Tell me about it.
So Love and Marriage. So I used to live in Huntsville. When I was married, that's where I lived with my ex-husband. And so many years after Huntsville is somehow on the map now.
Mhm.
And they're on the map through this show, Love and Marriage Huntsville. And I probably watched it once or twice, but her name is Melody. And I remember interviewing her, and I was just really inspired by um, Melody's story. She and her husband started off as school teachers, and while they were teaching, they started doing uh, home preservation. And
Mhm.
from that, they started getting these contracts with banks to do home preservation on a larger scale. and became millionaires within like a little under 5 years.
Wow.
And they very young couple, and so they started building houses and just really expanding their business. But I was really inspired by them inspired by her because I only interviewed her. But I was really inspired by the fact that they were once teachers and they had this belief and this dream in themselves, and they just put it into action. And from that, she told me how she had reached out to the producer many years prior to getting the show, and she pitched the concept to him. And at that time, he turned her down, but he gave her some pointers, and she went back to work. And she got to work, and she started building her social following, building her brand, and really, really building that brand. And after she built that brand, she went back to that producer and said, this is what I've built, and I would love to do a show, a concept around my life, and and what we've built. And that's how Love and Marriage Huntsville came about, and that's how they got on the map. Who would have known?
Oh wow. Okay.
Nice.
we have to Google that show and check it
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she put Huntsville on the map with that show because
Mhm.
Huntsville is a little small town. It really is.
It
I
is.
live there. It's a
Right.
Yep.
It is.
So
It's
Melody did it.
okay.
Awesome.
Yep. It's steadily growing. Now we know why.
That's why.
Yep.
It's a good testament of, when you get feedback that doesn't feel favorable, it all depends on you in terms of what you decide to do with it and how you can mature that, or if you decide to sit on it or do nothing. Because you could have taken it away and just said, you know what, never mind,
Yep.
or, just dismissed it. But the vision or even the purpose in the message that she wanted to get out was bigger than that no or that come back later. It was just the not right now.
Not right now.
Not right now. Hey,
Right.
Terre, we have a question from Tara Mitchner. She wanted you to expound a little bit more on imposter syndrome.
So, imposter syndrome is a concept wherein you don't believe you're deserving of what is happening to you. You don't believe that that you should be where you are. You feel as if though you are an imposter in your own experiences and in your own life. And a lot of people talk about that in the corporate space. And they talk about it really because it affects, as they say, more women than it does men. And so it's really this notion that you are an imposter in your own life, that doubt that you have, that doubt that we feed ourselves, that, like I talked about earlier, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not supposed to be here, that I didn't earn this, when in fact you did. And so that's really what that imposter syndrome looks like. And many people experience it on many levels, even folks who are at very high levels in their careers, often or in their positions in life, often can experience imposter syndrome.
That's right. And I think it was Sheryl Sandberg's books, Lean In, that talks a little bit more about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I did not read the book, but I just remember maybe about 5 years ago, everybody talking about imposter syndrome and what that looked like. And so you sometimes it's funny because unless you have a name to put on something, sometimes you don't know what you're experiencing. You just know that, I'm going through something, I'm experiencing something, but I don't have a name to put on it. I don't have a phrase. I don't know what this is. And so when I started to understand the concept, that I started to see, and I think that a few things gave me, when you asked me earlier about why have I done the things that other people haven't done, for one, it's because sometimes I just see myself like, I just think like, well, you know what? You're amazing. Why not do it?
Love it.
Sometimes I just tell myself like, sometimes as much as I've experienced imposter syndrome, I also have a bit of an ego. And so
there you go.
My ego says, girl, you are the bomb. Girl,
Right.
you write very well. Girl,
Okay.
you speak very well, right? So I tell myself this. I'm like, well, why can't you do it? Why shouldn't you do it? And then I also see people doing it, whatever that it is, And I will admit I've been critical, and I'm like, oh, but they're not a great writer. Oh, but they're not a great speaker. But I always come back to this. But they're doing it.
You're doing
Yes.
it.
But
That's
they're
right.
doing it. And so
Nothing.
that's what drives me. It's like
That's
if
right.
they can do it, then what is your reason for not doing it?
Mm-hmm.
If they
That's
have
it.
children and a job and a husband and a this and a that, why are you not doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Hey, thank you, Terre. This has been awesome. We're running over on time.
We are.
The conversation is so good. It's excellent. Everything that you're saying, I think, is so empowering to our listeners, the ones that will listen today, and those who will listen to the replay over the next few days. So thank you very much. Do you have any last words you want to share?
I just want to encourage people, especially right now with everything that's going on. I want to encourage people to stay aware of how they're feeling, what they're experiencing. Mental health is really serious, and there are a lot of people struggling through mental health challenges. And I want to encourage people to listen to your own inner voice. And when something doesn't feel right, to don't be afraid to seek help, to tell someone, because I think that more importantly, that's one of the most important things that some of us have touched on it. We talked about it a little bit, but you can't be amazing in the world if you are struggling internally and or dealing with things by yourself. And we don't have to deal with things by ourselves. I know that this doesn't have anything to do with grit per se, but when we talk about trauma, we talk about all that we've been through. I really want to encourage people to tend to yourself and to what I say, parent yourself. A parent looks at us and says, you know what, something's wrong with you. Maybe you should sleep. Maybe you should eat. We have to learn to parent ourselves and tell the same thing to ourselves. The same thing you would tell your child, you need to tell yourself, and to be honest with ourselves about where we are and what we need at all times.
Wow. That is awesome.
Mic drop. Out. Peace.
Drop the mic, right? Exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lee, did you want to wrap? I've got a couple of notes I want to make sure that I recap from the conversation that we had with Miss. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Okay. So really
do that.
All right, I got a friend who just won't sit still. Nothing is impossible, right? Recognizing that you can do whatever you decide to put your mind to, and recognizing that there is strength even in your ability to be vulnerable. So thank you so much, Terre, for your vulnerability and for sharing your story. Having someone in your life who truly believes in you and will invest in you and invest in the things that are important to you or to help cultivate you in ways is important. Recognize that you are enough, even if you have to stand before the mirror and say that over and over again when you encounter difficult situations and when you're thriving. It's recognizing that you have enough, that you are enough to do what you need to do and to get it done. Overcome the imposter syndrome, especially amongst women. And it's just like you said, the notion of feeling and thinking that you're not enough to be where you are or to have the things that are for you. Let nothing stop you from your purpose or your destiny. Be willing to invest in the dreams of your young people and the young people that are around you. Instead of telling yourself why you can't do something, instead tell yourself why you can. And it's all about the execution and getting it done. It's about putting those steps in motion the way that Terre has been able to accomplish so much and overcome just tremendous adversity and call those things trials or overcome those trials with triumphs is through execution and as you mentioned, your faith and prayer, being able to journal even through those difficult times. And then listen to your inner voice. Never drown out that sound of the inner voice that tells you when to stop, when to go, when to sit, when to spend time quietly waiting or patiently just recognizing what the next step or the next move is. So thank you so much, Terre. I hope I recap some of the things that you mentioned.
I didn't know I said all that. Yes.
I was here just scribbling and taking some notes, but yes, I captured those.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent.
Quite
And
well.
Terre, do we have all your social media handles?
So on Instagram, you can find me at Terre Holmes or at Lily and Eve. And I have a Facebook group called the Lux Life, Luxe, the Lux Life with Lily and Eve. And on Facebook, I am the Terre Holmes because there is another Terre Holmes. Can you believe
All
that?
right, there you go. Hey,
So I'm
probably younger than you and stole your name, but
so I am the Terre Holmes on Facebook, and then the website lilyandeve.com. And so yeah, you can find me there. And then the podcast is coming up, the Terre Holmes Show. So be sure to subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll get information when the podcast drops. I have a YouTube station, Terre Holmes, as well, and that's where we're going to have our the visual or the video version of the podcast on the YouTube station, Terre Holmes. So yeah, I think that about wraps it all up.
Okay, all right. Well, we're very proud of you. Great to learn from you today and just get to know more about you and all the amazing things that you're doing. You are definitely a woman with grit, and inspiring more women with grit and some men with grit.
Yes, we don't leave our men folk out.
Yes. Charelle, you going to take us out?
I am. Well, again, thank you so much, Terre. We just had a great time. Like Lee said, we are already over on time, and we try to make sure that we're prompt for our viewers. But it was just such a rich conversation that we wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to go deep. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time and for your wisdom that you've shared with our viewers. Join us again next week. We're super excited. We'll be back 7 p.m. Central Standard, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard with another phenomenal woman of grit. Next week, we are bringing in Miss Sharon Reynolds, local to the Nashville area, of which we are super excited to have her as well. So if there are any last questions, let me just make sure we look one last time before we go ahead and close out and say good night. Be sure to let us know where you are joining in from. Be sure to also share this on all of the feeds, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or even the website, so that others can also get an opportunity to learn the pearls of wisdom from Mr. Ray. Please don't share it. Don't just keep it to yourself, right?
Yeah. Make sure you like our pages and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's brand new. We gotta get subscribers.
Sharing is caring.
That's right.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
That's right.
Ray.
Thank you.
Real, take care.
I appreciate it.
Have a good night.
All right. Everyone have an amazing week.